welcome back. I'm Lizzie or Elizabeth, whichever you prefer to call me, and I am back. I had to take a bit of a break from uploading because I just moved and I had to kind of adjust to the new place and get unpacked. And there was a whole ordeal where I could not find my microphone. And but yeah, I am back and I am going to be uploading consistently from now on. Hopefully, my goal is to upload twice a week, but there is a chance that some weeks I will only be uploading once a week. We'll just see how things go and see what works best for me and my videos. And yeah, anyway, but yeah, today I have a story time for you guys. And in the background, I have a little speed paint of my original characters, Lux and Rose, and they are from my webtoon series, not the way. The Rose and No Thorns. Sorry, I have two going, and they both start with D, so it confuses me. Anyway, it's the Rose with No Thorns. I'm actually currently redoing it, but if you would like to see the old version of it, it is still up, and I will gladly put the link in the description, and you guys can go check it out. But yes, the story time for today is actually about a job that I had. So far, I've only worked at two places, and they were both restaurants. One was a bigger chain restaurant, kind of like Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or whatever. Not as big, but it's getting there. I think it's mainly in the United States. I'm not sure if it's reached any other countries yet. And the other one was actually last year. I quit in like September or something like that. Anyway, the last job I had was a doozy, and I'm gonna be telling you why today because it was an experience for sure, and I feel like everyone has to have a bad experience working at a restaurant because that is the only way I can explain this. Like every other story time I've heard about people working at a restaurant, it always turns out bad, especially when the restaurant is smaller and only has about 5 locations and is mainly family owned. So, I'm not gonna be giving out names, and I'm not gonna tell y'all the name of the restaurant for mostly privacy reasons because it's so small, y'all could easily find the location, and I'm not trying to dox myself. But the restaurant that I worked at, it was so close by, so it was more convenient for me, and I knew that if I didn't have a ride, I could just walk there since I don't have my license yet. So yeah, I applied there and got a job. I started working there last April and worked until like September or something like that. So almost close to 6 months. The job was pretty simple. It was kind of like working a food simulator in my eyes. Take the customer orders, hand them out, clean the dining hall. It was pretty simple. The main issue with it was the fact that when I first started working there, um, they pretty much just put me on a night shift and just told the coworkers, she's new, she doesn't know what she's doing, teacher. And sometimes I would get coworkers who would actually genuinely teach me what I'm doing, and it's like, okay, so you go in here and da da da, and then sometimes I would get stuck with coworkers who didn't want to teach me because they had been working there for so long and they thought they were better than me. So they would do this thing of just like, oh my gosh, move and I'll do it for you because you're taking too long. And yeah, it was just one of those experiences where it took me a lot longer to learn what I was supposed to be doing than it should have. And I blame them. Anyway, so this job, it was going pretty well at first. I originally got it because I needed to save up for a trip to see my boyfriend. He lives in a different state, so I needed money, and I was mainly paying for this myself, other than the few family members I was able to pitch in a little bit. Um, it ended up working out pretty well, but the main problem was the scheduling and the management. We'll talk about the scheduling first. So at first, it was pretty okay. Like my first week, I worked about 15 hours, and it was a bi-weekly paycheck, like a what was it, payroll or whatever, pay schedule. Yeah, pay schedule. So my first week was like about 15 hours, and then the next week was kind of cutting it to 20. At first they were just kind of working me in and see how I fit in and all that. And it was, like I said, it was going pretty well. I was getting to know my coworkers, and I remember like the first 2 weeks there, someone looked at me and they're like, if you are working here for like 3 weeks and you don't like it, leave, because it's not worth it. And I'm like, surely she's exaggerating this, right? Like, surely she's just kind of have to be pulling my leg. Maybe she's teasing me, because all the other coworkers there really didn't seem to like me that much, except for maybe two or three. Um, just a foreshadowing for the fact that she was not wrong. I should have left, but I needed the money that badly. Um, so yeah, the scheduling was pretty fine. Like I said, my very first paycheck was maybe 100, which is not that great, but I was getting paid like 850, and I was told that if I worked there for 3 months, I could ask for the original price, not the price. I could ask for a raise basically. So I was like, okay, 3 months really isn't that bad. So I'll just kind of wait 3 months and then ask if they can raise how much they're paying me, and it shouldn't be that bad, right? No, it's pretty bad. So yeah, they slowly stopped scheduling me as much. Like, so I would work maybe 3 to 4 times a week, and then suddenly it would be 2 times a week, but it would be longer shifts. And then that happens for a few months, and I kind of had to go back and forth with the manager and sit here and be like, could you please try and schedule me more, because I really need this money. And to be fair, at the time I was going to school for 2 days a week, and I also had dance ministry at my church, so I had to have a night for that. So yeah, my schedule did look a little funky, and that's why I didn't push too hard on it. But it wasn't too long before my schedule completely basically alleviated, so I was able to work all week if they wanted me to. And that's what I told them. But for some reason they seem to not want to schedule me, and it's not like, it didn't seem like they had trouble with money issues, because everyone else that they had, all the other employees worked more than I did, and they apparently got paid more than I did. And that might have been the issue, I'm not sure, but I think it was just me, because like I said, the other employees, they worked pretty much every single day, and they had been working there for years. So not only were they more experienced, but they had more, they were getting paid more and were scheduling me more. And I was trying to figure out, maybe I just have to work here for a while. So I kept going and going until eventually it started to get to where, like, right before I left for my trip, they would only work me maybe twice a week, very rarely twice a week, for 4 hours each shift. And I talked to the manager. I'm like, look, I know I've said this before, but I do need the money, and I am more than willing to work. So if you could put me, like, if you need me in morning shifts or night shifts, I am more than willing to, switch my schedules over of like which days I go to school or whichever, just so you could work me more. And she's like, I will talk to everybody and I will make sure that I can try and schedule you more. Like, each time she seemed very sweet and understanding, so made me feel relief. And I was just like, okay, so maybe finally someone's gonna listen to me. No, it continued on like that for the rest of the time. I was constantly working 4 hour shifts. Maybe once in a while they would sprinkle in me in like a 7 hour shift, but it would be the only shift I would work that week. So each paycheck was dwindling down. Literally, I have a screenshot of every paycheck that I got, and it kept lowering every single time, which was a problem, because as someone who was trying to save up for a trip, it was a week trip. I needed the money. So, like, I was just sitting there watching my check kind of get smaller and smaller bit by bit, and I'm like, what are they trying to do? Do they think I'm dumb? Do they think I don't notice these things? It was a problem. And this was not the only issue. No. I had coworkers there who were massive jerks, and I actually went to school with most of them. And this one girl, we're gonna call her Carly, Carly had an issue where she thought she could overpower everyone because she had been working there for 3 to 4 years and she knew her way around the kitchen. And she would make snotty remarks towards me and my best friend who had started working there a few months after I did. And by the way, they didn't train her at all. They just threw her on the floor and assumed that she would pick everything up. They trained me a little bit. They didn't even train my friend at all, which was a problem because she didn't know what she was doing and it was her first time working. That was her first job. And her first impression was, let's not train you. Let's just throw you out on the field or whichever and assume you're going to know what to do. Anyway, this girl, Carly, she would make snotty remarks at me. She would roll her eyes. She would push me out of the way to take a customer's order when she thought I was going too slow. And then she would get mad at me when mistakes were made on customer orders, but shut up the moment that it was someone else's mistake. Like one time, one of the mistakes was like they got the wrong sauce on the chicken. And so she's like, hey, Lizzie, you got this wrong. You needed to reread this to them. And then my manager, we'll call her Brianna was like, oh, that was my mistake, my bad. And she's like, oh, okay, sorry. Like, this was very clearly like she was trying to target me and my friend, because she did the same thing to my friend, but worse, because she wouldn't snap back at her. I would look at her and be like, let me do what I have to do. Or, well, if I did it wrong, then teach me. You know. Anyway, we had another manager. We're gonna call her Dean. I don't know why. Dean just seems like a good name. Anyway, this Dean manager, she was one to go around on a rampage and scream. Not really scream, yell a lot. And she would throw tantrums, and when she didn't get her way, she would start making food and stuff her face. And she seems like one of the types of people that if it didn't make her look bad, she would throw things at people. And to the other coworkers, this seems normal. I don't know how this is normal, but to them it was normal, and they tell me, oh, don't mind her, this is kind of like a normal thing. And I eventually did get used to it. Even though yelling it makes me nervous. So at first she made me nervous, but I was like, okay, she's really not that bad. And she was one of the managers that liked me for some reason. So, like I said, I could deal with her. But there was this one night, my friend was working the shift, the night before I was scheduled. And it was a night shift, it was only like 5 hours. She calls me after dance practice in tears and is like, she made me so upset that I started to throw up. And so I am actually home. And I'm like, what happened? And she explains that Dean, every time she would make a mistake, would yell at her and basically act as if she was an idiot. And instead of, correcting her like a manager should, would just keep yelling at her and embarrassing her in front of customers and her coworkers. And I was like, okay, well, surely this is just like a one-time thing. Maybe she was having a bad night. No. The next night, I go into my shift. And I was like, okay, this isn't so bad working with Dean. She seems to be kind of in a good mood. She was not. So I was working with these two new girls. They were in high school, so they were kind of a little bit lazier than I would have liked it, but I was okay with working with them because they talked to me, and they were the few coworkers that I had that would actually sit there and have conversations with me and stuff, so I liked them. And we would finally get done with the rush because nighttime was kind of more hectic. And she would sit there and go, hey, you need to get this done. Oh, okay, well, I just finished this, so I'm sorry. And she's like, no, you need to be getting this done, right away. If you have time to leave, then you have time to clean. I was like, okay, so, yeah, whichever. And then she goes out to one of the customers who's sitting there and eating. I'm assuming they're regulars. I don't know, because I hadn't worked night shift in, 3 months. And she's sitting there it's like I have to tell them how to do their job, and it they don't know how to learn how to do it. And she was sitting there and talking about us, all of the employees working that day, to these customers, and talking crap about us in front of us and laughing. And the customers were kind of laughing, but they seemed a little bit nervous. And I was like, okay, well, that's really irritating, but like, whichever, I can continue on. And then it just gets worse from there. I there was like a comment thing that you can put on customer tickets where you can say like, oh, this customer wants this or that. Well, during day shift, which is where I mainly worked, they only put me on night shift because they couldn't figure out where else to put me that week. Um, I let's see. The thing was the fact that if a customer wanted their sandwich all the way, which meant like everything on it, and usually someone who works in the back would know what that means. So you would go into the comments and you would just put ATW, which means all the way. I was taught specifically to do that by multiple people. Like 3 or 4 people who had worked there told me, "Oh, you just put ATW. You don't need to go in and add all that because the cooks already know what you mean." Well, I did that night, and Dean comes yelling out, "Who did this? Who put ATW on here?" And I was like, "Oh, I did." And she's like, "Do you understand what all the way means? I could go back there and put every single ingredient that there is in that kitchen on that order. And that's not what they would want. And then they would get mad and yell at you, right?" And I was like, "Well, I'm sorry, but that's just how I was taught." And she's like, "No, we don't do it that way. No one would tell you to do it that way." And she just kept going on and on. And I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry." And she purposely went out of her way to call this customer. She found the customer's phone number, called her, and asked her specifically what she wanted on the sandwich. By the way, the order wasn't wrong. Just saying, the order was fine. Anyway, so that made me upset, and I'm already a nervous person, especially when it comes to people yelling at me. I don't do very well. Um, so she goes into the back, and I hear her telling the cooks how stupid you have to be to sit there and put all the way when you don't know how many ingredients are in the back and what she could have been putting on that sandwich. And how I should have asked specifically what the customer wanted and yada yada yada. By the way, the customers know about this rule too. They know about the fact that they just put ATW. So when they tell you all the way, they expect you to know what all the way means. Because like all the customers do that. They've Most of them were regulars because, like I said, this is a very small restaurant in a small town, and so like most of them were regulars and they know what that meant, and most of us knew what that meant. So I didn't see an issue with it, but yeah, I was like, okay, well, next time I will just ask for sure that that's what I meant, and we'll just leave it at that. Another customer comes in, and he legit's like, "Oh, I want the chicken sandwich all the way." And I was like, "When you mean all the way, do you mean like literally everything on it?" And he's like, "Yes." So I'm like, okay, for sure, this is what I meant to do, right? Maybe she just meant it for like specific things, right? Because the other customer, I think, wanted everything but like one item. So I go in and put all the way because he literally said every option that you have on there, I want on there. And I was like, okay, great. So I put it in the comments and I told the cook, and the cook's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I got it. It's fine. I understand what you mean. I'll make sure that it gets told to Dean." Dean, uh, this lady comes to me, slams her hand on the counter in front of a customer, in front of me, and looks me in my eyes and starts yelling in my face. Mind you, she's not even a foot away. She is like close to my face and starts yelling at me, saying, "Why on earth would you put all the way on the sandwich? I told you earlier that's not how we do things." And she was just yelling and yelling on and on about like, "How do you know that's not what the customer wanted?" And yada yada. I was like, "I made sure to ask specifically, and he said that he wanted it all the way, so that's how I did it." She continues to yell. She goes out the door trying to find this customer. She brings him in, manages to convince him that that was wrong and that's not his order, and then goes in the back. The same cook that I already explained the situation to lied and told her, "Yeah, I don't know why she did that. That wasn't right." And mind you, none of my coworkers stood up for me. None of my coworkers told her to stop yelling at me. None of my coworkers told them to not no one said anything about the tyrant and tantrums that this grown lady who was in her 50s was throwing. Yeah, she was in her 50s, by the way. Anyway, so at that point, I am shaky. I am tired. I am so emotional. And I was just ready for the night to end. And it finally comes to closing time, and we start closing up, and suddenly they've changed everything at night shift. It used to be like, because there's usually three people up front and there's three tasks. So they would divide them up by the three people and we would just figure out who would do it. Without telling me or warning me or anything like that, they just expected me to know that it's actually all three people do all three things and they kind of just, do it all. Like I was just expected to know that. And so when they both went back, the two other girls went back to do the dishes and stuff. I was like, okay, cool. They have the dishes done, so I will go finish the dining room and make sure everything else is done at the sodas and make sure those are soaking, whichever. And Dean comes up to me and it's like, okay, the other two girls have done their part of the dishes and there's still a crap ton left. You need to go do your part. And for one girl went back there for like 10 minutes. The other girl hadn't touched a dish. She went back there acting as if she was about to do the dishes, then came right back out and started talking. She had not done a single thing that entire night, pretty much. It was me and this other girl. So, at that point, I was just like so stressed out because she had been yelling at me all day, and I was so like done and ready that I just start crying. I just start bawling my eyes out, and I look at these other girls and I'm like, please stay here because I do not want her to continue yelling at me and I don't want to be left alone. Well, the two girls, precious things, go to Dean and tell her that I was crying because I didn't want to do the dishes. So Dean then starts yelling at me, why are you crying? You have to do the dishes. We do all this as a group. It's not like how they do it in the daytime. I don't know how they do it in the daytime, and I know, the other manager will do things for you, but that's not how we do it here at night. Okay? So you need to go back there and do your part. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So I go back and do the dishes while bawling my eyes out, mind you. And I notice how all the other coworkers are gone into the other part of the kitchen area, and she's talking to them, talking about me and the fact that I'm crying and saying how ridiculous it is and how childish it is for me to do that. And then she tells them to go home. Every single person that was working that night, she tells them to go home when they aren't finished. And she lets me do the rest by myself in the dark. She turned off all the lights and let me do it in the dark. And at this point, we were 30 minutes after closing when I should have already been left by now because every other night shift I had done before then, which I used to do when I had first started working there, I would have already been gone by this point. She kept me there longer than I was supposed to be there by myself in the dark. And when my mom had called to ask what was going on and why they hadn't released me yet, she caught an attitude with my mom, telling her, oh, well, she's not actually gonna leave at 9. No, she has to stay and close. What she didn't tell her was the fact that her daughter was sitting there in the dark crying, doing the dishes by herself while everybody else had already left. So finally, after that call, she gives it a few minutes and then she's like, okay, fine, leave. I'll do the rest. So I'm finally able to go home. I clock out as fast as I can and I skirt out of there before she tries to bring me back in. And at that point, I am just bawling my eyes out. I can't control it because it was so overwhelming for me. And I ended up quitting the next day. I texted the main manager and I was like, look, Dean humiliated me last night. I don't appreciate being talked to like that. I am not okay with it. So I don't want to work with her anymore and I quit. And she's like, I completely understand. I am so sorry that happened. And yeah, I never went back because no, that was not okay, especially for a grown woman to do. So, more of the story is don't work at small restaurants that are mainly owned by family members because they might have a manager there that should not be working there. I really don't know why she was allowed to work there, because even the owner would get onto her for the fact that she would go around yelling. But the thing is the fact that customers love her because when their orders would get messed up, she would not only give them a new plate of food, but she would give them more food than what they ordered. And she wouldn't make them pay for it, and she would go out of her way to do things for customers. So, in theory, she would be a good manager, but behind closed doors, she was a tyrant. She threw tantrums like a child, and she made fun of her employees to other people. And as far as I'm concerned, I am hoping that, you know, she gets fired one day, because but she's not my problem anymore, and she's not my friend's problem anymore either, because she also quit the same day, and we were just both done with it. And it's wild that me and my friend had the exact same experience. 2 nights in a row, this grown woman went around cussing and yelling at her employees who had no, like, they had no voice. I didn't have a choice. I had to do what she said. And my poor friend, she got so stressed out that she got sick. So anyway, I just, you know, some people just don't need to be management. Some people maybe don't even need to be working in a restaurant, and maybe they should just go home and stay home and never leave. I'm sorry, that's weird. Anyway, yeah, it was an interesting experience. I don't regret working there because now I know how to deal with people like that. But it was stressful, and to anyone who has dealt with something like that, I am so sorry. That it's not fun. It's not fun to deal with someone who will constantly yell at you like that. And I hope I never have to again. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much the end of the video, and the end of the speed paint. Don't comment on the background. Like I said, I am still practicing. However, if you have any tips for me, like I said, just leave them in the comments. I will gladly take any tips or critiques or whichever, because it's pretty bad. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this story time. If you guys have any experience like I do, where you had to deal with an awful manager or maybe crappy coworkers, or you know, you just weren't trained properly, just leave it down in the comments. I read everything. I respond to everything as I try to, at least. And yeah, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like content like this, if you like story times or speed paints or drawing challenges, whichever, check out my channel and subscribe if you'd like to. Leave a like and comment, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.